This video is brought to you by Practical Music Theory for the Rock Guitarist, my new book, which is a comprehensive guide to all aspects of music theory necessary for playing rock guitar. From blues to the cycle of fifths, from understanding and using modes to choosing the right notes for a melodic solo, from pentatonic scales to chord construction and keys. It's all covered in a clear and concise manner. With accompanying video demonstrations, jam tracks and tabs, you'll learn to use the knowledge you gain in accessible ways that make sense for less than the cost of a few guitar lessons. Check out the link in the description for more details. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Let's talk about guitar magazines, shall we, if anyone still reads those. I don't anymore, and the reason is because they're boring. And that is not the fault of the guitar magazines themselves, and I'll explain that little, the way I've arrived at that particular conclusion as we go through this video. But if we go back to the early 1980s, when I was just kind of leaving school and starting college, I started noticing that there were magazines devoted to my favourite pastime. No, not that one, playing the guitar. Yes, anyway, there were magazines devoted to the guitar, and the first one I really started seeing was, I guess, Guitar Player magazine, which is the US publication, still going, I believe, but back in the 80s it had that wonderful thing of a tear-out record, a flexi disc, with a piece of music from an artist that I probably hadn't heard of before. And you could listen to this artist, you can check them out, and maybe if you like them, go out and, take a chance on buying an album. But then in 1985, along came a British competitor, Guitarist magazine. That's a very young-looking Steve Rothery on the cover there, isn't it? And then they had a sister publication that came out in the early 1990s, Guitar Techniques, which, as the name suggests, was all about, improving your technique on the guitar, various bits and pieces of lesson content. And then the one that just seemed to be off to a bit of a slow start but came to dominate the industry was Total Guitar. I say it came to dominate the industry because I think it bought up all of the other UK titles like Guitarist and Guitar Techniques and so on. And every month, on whatever date these magazines were released, I would head off down to the local branch of W.H. Smith. Is that the only chain of national news agents in the UK? Anyway, off down to Smith's I would go and purchase all of the copies of all the magazines I wanted, and that would be like a plethora of reading material each month. And I can't tell you how much I learned from those magazines, the shapes and patterns that my fingers, through trial and error and experimentation, had discovered seemed to fit when it came to playing lead guitar bits and pieces. I learned that they were called scales, and I also learned about modes. It was thanks to a Guitar Magazine article, that I think this one was in Guitar Player, that I learned what modes were and how powerful they were and how I was using them without realising it anyway. I also learned about the history of the electric guitar. Who were the key figures in its development? Things like the Les Paul log guitar, and also learned astonishing revelation when I learned this from a Guitar Magazine, was that Leo Fender, the man who arguably designed two of the most perfect electric guitar models in history, the Stratocaster and the Telecaster, he didn't play a note of guitar, and he never did until, the day he died. That was like a mind-blowing thing for me. I also learned about, as I said earlier, with those little kind of tear-out discs in Guitar Player magazine, but also just from reading about new players. If it hadn't been for guitar magazines, I doubt I'd have ever discovered Eric Johnson or Joe Satriani or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Steve Vai. Key players, people who shaped my musical tastes as the 80s kind of progressed and we went into the 90s, and I started doing this, well, not making YouTube videos, but teaching guitar for a living. Another thing I can thank guitar magazines for is that I learned to read tab from guitar magazines. the kind of thing that Guitarist magazine always used to have, like a monthly solo analysis, courtesy of this chap here, Phil Hilborn. And there was a compilation of like all the solo analyses that he'd done that was published under, I think it was just called Solo, wasn't it? I should have got a picture of that book there, but I remember buying that book, and from looking at the tabs in his book and the tabs that he published in the magazines and thinking, well, okay, yeah, I know that riff sounds like that. And as well as the tab, it would have the music notation written down, so I could pretty easily get the tab, but also thinking, okay, so what that thing that sounds like that looks like written down is like that. I also got the basis of certainly reading rhythm notation, if not, full-on music notation. Another thing that I can thank, guitar magazines for. I learned, as I say, loads of classic solos from Phil Hilborn, and I also learned, courtesy of, which is the right button, is it this one? I think it's this one, courtesy of this chap here, Robbie Gladwell, Dr. Robert, as he was called in Guitarist magazine. He would do a monthly kind of agony aunt or agony uncle kind of column where he would tell you, somebody'd write in, my guitar sounds out of tune when I go above the 12th fret or something like that, and it's and he'd explain about setting intonation or setting up your action or adjusting your truss rod or any of the kind of little bits and pieces of routine guitar maintenance that with a little bit of practice you can do for yourself. All of these things which I had for a long time, the attitude where if I've got to take a file to something, then that's going to go to the expert, the guy who's going to fix it. I'm starting to get a little bit, well, I've been a little bit braver on that score for a while now. I'll do fret jobs and that kind of thing. But for a long time, it was a case of, if I've read about it in Dr. Roberts' column in Guitarist magazine, if it's turning a screw or an Allen key or something like that, and I mess up, I can always reverse that adjustment. So I learned how to do basic guitar setups from from guitar magazines, especially Dr. Roberts' column. And this chap as well, Neville Martin, he used to do a column called The Blues Headlines in one of the magazines. It's certainly one of the UK ones. Might have been Guitar Techniques, might have been Guitarist magazine, I can't remember now. But I learned a lot of, I've always been a blues guitar player, I've always thought, this is my forte, this is what I know about. But I still learned a lot of valuable things from reading his column. So why are guitar magazines boring nowadays? Well, it's because there is a cyclical nature to this kind of thing, okay? I made a video very much like this about 5 or 6 years ago, where I was talking about why I didn't read guitar magazines anymore. And when you're producing this kind of content, you do kind of get back round to the beginning again and have to, don't have to, but it's worth doing a retread, maybe seeing if you can cover the topic that you covered years ago in a little bit more of a professional, enlightened, and perhaps illuminating manner. And that's hopefully what I'm doing here. So what happens is, as you get back round to the beginning again and the guitar magazines start covering the same topics over and over and over again, over again, shall we say, then you think, yeah, I already knew Leo Fender didn't play the guitar. I already knew about the Les Paul log. I already knew how to read tabs. So you kind of start flicking past those articles. And the reason I stopped reading guitar magazines, a while ago was because, I'd go out and I'd spend thick end of a £5 or more than a £5 on a guitar magazine and find myself just kind of leafing through it, and where it would once take me 2 or 3 days to kind of devour every last morsel of information in there. I had to, my wife had to go into hospital a few years ago, and I didn't even have a smartphone then, so I couldn't entertain myself on the phone while I was waiting while she was getting seen to. So I went to the news agents in the hospital and bought a guitar magazine. This is going back, as I said, getting on for about 10 years. And I just leafed through this magazine and thought, yeah, not interested in that. I know all about that. Yeah, that's boring. And I just came to the conclusion back then that guitar magazines are just boring now. And it's not their fault. It's that they're doing what they've always done, but as a consumer of that information, you get to a point where it's almost like you're full. You have this hinterland of knowledge that you've gleaned from these publications, and do you really need to read it all over again? Or is enough? The other thing is that I mentioned Total Guitar there. When they bought out all of the competition, certainly the UK magazines like Guitarist and Guitar Techniques, it did kind of get a little bit more slick and corporate. I remember Guitarist magazine used to have little comedy skits on their monthly CD, two characters called Jack and Bobby. And that was all that kind of nonsense was axed, and it became a lot more, as I say, slick, polished, corporate feeling, and a lot of the fun went out of it then. But even by that point, I think I was starting to realise that, yeah, I'm leafing past a lot of these articles because I've already got this information. So there you go. That is why, to me at least, guitar magazines are boring. If you are new to the world of guitar, then yes, all of that information is out there on the internet, but there's nothing quite like having that date to look forward to when you know that that month's edition of the magazine is going to be available, and you can look at lots of guitar pictures, and you can do a bit of fantasy guitar shopping, and you can learn stuff about your favourite instrument. But you will probably get to a point where you think, yeah, I know all that now. Anyway, I'm starting to repeat myself, much like the guitar magazines are, so I'm going to wrap it up there for today, folks. So that is the video for today. Let me know what your thoughts on guitar magazines are down in the comments. Just interested to know if you still buy them, if you still read them, or if, like me, you are kind of past that now. Let me know down in the comments. And if you've enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not drop me a like as well while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday. Like tomorrow, and every Friday, 5 p.m. UK time, we drink beer and we talk about stuff, music, guitars, guitar magazines perhaps. It's a great way to kick off the weekend, and I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.